Senator Mike Lee. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thank you very much, Mark.
Now, Mike Lee, you see what John Boehner said about Ted Cruz at Stanford. You've heard what Pete King had to say on CNN. Pretty heavy, vile stuff, my friend. What is your response?
It's really vile stuff. And, what perplexes me about this, Mark, is that these are not words that I hear these gentlemen using in response to anyone else. I hear John Boehner heaping praise on Bernie Sanders, heaping praise on Hillary Clinton, heaping praise on Donald Trump. And yet for Ted Cruz, what does he call him? He calls him the devil. He calls him Satan. He calls him Lucifer. Why? The question is why? Why does he do this? Well, there's an answer. Ted Cruz actually challenges the system, the very same system that Donald Trump claims to rail against. And this is an insightful moment. I mean, first of all, I'm appalled that John Boehner would do this. I have bit my tongue. I've held my tongue for years on John Boehner, even when I disagreed with him, because I respected him as a person and I respected his office not enough to not call him out on it personally. I expressed disagreement with his policy, but I never ridiculed him personally. The fact that he has done this is appalling, and he should be ashamed of himself, and I demand that he apologize. But more importantly, Mark, this is a wake-up call to the American people. This is a wake-up call to people who are supporting Donald Trump, thinking that he's the guy who's going to rail against the establishment. He's not. He is the establishment. He's the golfing buddy, the texting buddy of John Boehner, the same guy who praises Hillary Clinton, who praises Bernie Sanders. And so if you're out there thinking that Donald Trump is somehow going to be the guy who takes down the establishment, think again, because quite the opposite is true.
I don't think I've ever heard you so angry. This has really fired you up.
I am angry, Mark. I am livid because to have him talk in those terms about my friend Ted Cruz, when he doesn't know Ted Cruz from Adam. Ted Cruz has probably never spoken more than 4 or 5 words to John Boehner in his life, and I'm confident that every one of those words was polite. And yet he goes out and calls him the devil. This is wrong. And this should be a wake-up call to everyone in America. In particular, I speak to my friends in Indiana. Anyone who's thinking about how to vote in Indiana on Tuesday, please vote for Ted Cruz. Get your friends and your neighbors out to vote for Ted Cruz. If you don't live in Indiana, if you live in a state where you've already voted, you can show your support for Ted Cruz and your revulsion for this vile statement that John Boehner has made by going to tedcruz.org and volunteer your time or your money or anything else you've got to offer. We have got to help make clear that Ted Cruz is the only man in this race who will actually fight against the Washington, D.C. establishment because Donald Trump is part of it.
You know, as somebody who knows Ted Cruz, Senator Mike Lee, there's been a real effort to destroy his reputation, to destroy his character, to redefine him. It's day in and day out, day in and day out. Why don't you tell my audience, which is significant, about the man that you call friend, the man who's been one of your closest colleagues in the United States Senate?
You know, the reason Ted Cruz is my friend is not just because he and I share a lot of similar interests or a similar professional background. It's not just because we share a lot in common politically. It is first and foremost because a friend tells you the truth, and a friend does what he tells you he's going to do. And a friend will tell you the truth even when it's difficult. And that's who Ted Cruz is. I have never, ever seen Ted Cruz do anything other than what he said he was going to do. I have never seen Ted Cruz raise his voice in anger against a colleague. I have never seen Ted Cruz engage in any of the despicable acts that I've seen him be the recipient of in recent weeks and months. And I've had it. I've absolutely had it. It is time for us to expose people like John Boehner who are saying horrible things about him, or the fact that they are there, they're angry at him, they hate him, because he's railing against the establishment of which they are a part. Now, look, I bear no personal ill will toward John Boehner other than I want him to apologize. But in a sense, Mark, I'm grateful to John Boehner because John Boehner has exposed the truth here in a way that is far clearer. He's done this far better than I ever could. He has done that by saying, Donald Trump, he's great. I text with him. I golf with him. Yeah, Hillary Clinton, she's great. Bernie Sanders, he's great. But Ted Cruz, he's the devil. Why? Why, Mark? The why is exactly what we need to focus on. The why here shows us why we have to elect Ted Cruz as our next president. The why is because Ted Cruz believes in the Constitution. They don't want to be stuck with that because that makes it harder for them to do what they want to do, which is to build and concentrate more power in Washington, D.C. at the expense of everyone else.
Well, Senator Mike Lee, your passion on this is quite commendable. I want you to listen to Pete King very briefly, the congressman from, mostly Staten Island, I guess, in part, not in whole. Let's go to cut 2, Mr. Producer. Go.
I fully agree with John Boehner, and maybe he gives Lucifer a bad name by comparing him to Ted Cruz.
Let's stop there. Can you believe this?
No, I really can't. I really can't. I'm stunned. But here again, you ask the question, why? Why do they hate him? Well, Pete King, much like John Boehner, has helped increase the size and the scope and the cost and the reach and the intrusiveness of the federal government. What has Ted Cruz done? Well, he's fought against all that. Ted Cruz believes in the Constitution. He believes in federalism. He believes in separation of powers. So these guys can tolerate everything else. They'll praise Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and they'll praise Bernie Sanders and all the other statists out there. But when Ted Cruz comes along, Ted Cruz preaches constitutional restraint, and they can't tolerate that because that exposes them for who they are. So there again, that tells us a lot. It tells us a lot about the character of Peter King and John Boehner, and it tells us a lot about why we should be supporting Ted Cruz and not Donald Trump.
Senator Mike Lee, I want to thank you for your input on this. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's good to be with you.
It's good to be with you. God bless you.